I want to, got it. It's being recorded. Okay, thank you. So I want to start by talking about process, because I believe that that's one of the places that I've really gotten to excel in my career is honing a process where clients get what they want, they get a budget met, they get a schedule met, they get a house that they love, or whatever it is that we're designing. It's not always houses, but lately I want it to be houses more and more. And that to me makes me be successful in the world, that they get this project that they want, they get good architecture, and they have a home that they can love. And we all know that as easy as that sounds to do, sometimes it's a little elusive. And how do we codify this process for ourselves to make this occur all the time, right? So so as a process, and I'm going to, can I share the screen, Megan? Can I share my screen?
Can you not?
I cannot. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So so with this, and I'm gonna talk about process, then I'm gonna talk about the design, then I'm gonna say, so what makes this green? And then we're gonna leave time for questions at the end, okay? And I also didn't turn my timer on here. So let me do that. So I could be, I'll tell you what, Megan, tell me when I'm like 15 minutes out, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
So as architects, we get lulled into thinking that there's most projects come to the world with a design, bid, build process. And we're all familiar with that. We do it all day long, especially if you're doing corporate or government work. You design something, you bid it, and you build it. But then we all know that what that really is you design something, you bid it, then you have to value engineer it. Then you get to fight about whose fault the value engineering is, and then you build it. And to me, this was just too much consternation and taking too much fun out of an otherwise an enjoyable career. So I started working with a process which I learned from my years. Some of you who know me know that I spent a good 7-8 years of my career actually working for a contractor, being part of a design build company. And there we would design a little and then budget a little, and then design a little and budget a little, and design more and budget more. And the two would grow together. And because they grew together, the design never got bigger than the budget, and the budget never was too small for the design, because they kind of grew up together. And it occurred to me that that's a real reasonable way to look at the world. And that's a real reasonable way to bring a project into an existence. And that's what we needed to do. So we did that for a number of years. And then all along, I've always believed that we're screwing up the environment, and that as architects, we really can own our ability to do something about that. And first it was just not screwing up the environment, and then the global warming crisis got a name, and then we learned more about our carbon footprint, and that all we have to do is drastically cut back on our energy consumption. At the same time, I'm watching the building codes make infinitesimal advances forward regarding, oh yeah, you need a little R value over here, you need a little R value over here, not being very dissatisfied with what the building codes are asking, but knowing full well that as an architect and the person who's specifying your insulation and specifying whether you're going to have insulation below your slab and how big your furnace and your air conditioner are going to be and how are they specified, that as architects, we really have a lot to say about this. So I seek to have learned as much as I can, and I fall in love with the Passive House Institute of the US system, PHIUS for short, of that system of energy modeling where we could look at BTUs in and BTUs out and just look at the laws of physics and say, how many BTUs is it going to take to heat this house and how much insulation R value do we need wrapped around that house to keep that heat in the house in the wintertime or to keep the cooling kept into the house in the summertime. So I delved more and more into that, got very involved with the Passive House Institute of the US. I did not achieve certification because I realized, like AutoCAD, if you're not going to be doing it every day, then you should hire somebody who is doing it every day, because the person who's going to do it one day a week or one day every 2 weeks is not going to be as good at it as the person who's doing it every day. Does that make sense? If anybody out there other than me did all the training for AutoCAD and then completely forgot it 3 months later because you weren't doing it every day, it's the same kind of analogy. But I had to look at the reality of my life as a firm owner. I'm meeting new people who could be prospective clients. I'm talking to contractors. I'm writing proposals. I'm doing all the things of a firm. I'm reviewing drawings and sketching details, and I'm doing the things of a firm owner. And energy modeling on a daily basis is not going to be able to fit into that box. So so I chose to not be a certified PHIUS consultant, but to align myself with one. Tom Bowman, if anybody knows Tom and Sue Bowman, who we use our services back and forth. So now, added to the mix of how to bring the design and the project along together, I'm adding in the energy models. So we design a little, we budget a little, and we energy model a little. And then we design more, and we budget more, and we energy model more, and we bring everything along together. So, and that seems to be the recipe for success in meeting a budget. So I have this visual in my head. I have visuals in my head for just about everything. But if you were at a picnic and you were lined up with your friends and you were going to have a running race, or the contractor, energy modeler, architect, bank, and owner are all lined up like they're going to be in a race, but they're not really going to be in a race. In the old model, the architect would leap out there first, do all the designing, get all the drawings done, and then start talking to the bank or start talking to the contractor. Now, I think the right way to do this is where the architect takes a step forward. Then, well, the owner took a step forward first and hired the architect. And then the architect takes a step forward. The owner also took a step forward and talked to the bank about, hey, how much house can we afford? The architect does schematic design, writes up a narrative about how is this house constructed and how is it made, just in written format. That's another key to this process, so that then the contractor can take a step forward and say, yeah, I think we could build that for about so many dollars per square foot. And then the energy modeler gets involved and say, yeah, if I rough that out, it seems like it's going to meet the passive house energy model. So everybody takes a step forward, you know, and the bank says, yeah, we think we can handle this. And then everybody takes another step forward. You know, one of the beauties of this project, we had a floor plan, we had some elevations, we had the narrative, we had the contractor's budget, and the bank said, yeah, we could do an appraisal on that, which if your client can't get the money for a project, it's a dead project. Likewise, about a month ago, no, 2 months ago, I had a client show up and say, well, we want to build a new house. And I said, well, how much house can you afford? And they said, well, we have no idea. And I said, then I think you should talk to a bank and you should figure out how much house you can afford. So I'm still waiting to see if they come back and tell me how much, because if you tell me how much house you can afford, I can tell you about how many square feet of house that translates to, and we work backwards from there. So now, after process, I want to talk about the design. And to underscore, the key to the process is that it moves along with everybody step by step, and nobody gets too far out ahead of anybody else. No one's working in a vacuum and no one's getting too far ahead. So now let's talk about design. So I adore the client, and there's one of the things I adore about the client is that they are a young couple who has gotten their act together very early in life about what is important to them. They traded their life in Chicago to move where they can afford the land, walk to the dunes, and be close to family and friends. And it's important for them to build a green home, as it is the only kind of home they see themselves owning, given the state of our climate crisis and global warming. And it's the only kind of home I believe we should be building. So we started with the budget and figured out how many square feet would meet the budget. And just so you know, the house needs to be around $300,000 tops, everything all in. So we started with that budget, worked backwards and says, how big could the house could be? I thought, you know, there's a common parlance out there that the second story is cheaper to build than the first story. So I was thinking, well, let's have a 2-story house. But then I realized when you're talking about such a smaller home, the staircase takes up so much space, it wasn't working. So so we backed off of that. And the home ended up being a completely single-story home. I'm going to get the floor plan up here. So it's a very simple, compact floor plan, and that's if you're unfamiliar with the requirements of passive house, that's what works the best is a compact floor plan that is efficient in its own right. So we've got minimal windows on the north side of the house. Actually, we just have a door here with glass in it. We've got more windows on the south side of the home. This clearly faces east, and then there's a small window here facing west. This we're calling the extreme weather entry because there's a mudroom and it's an airlock. This is the door for more milder weather that goes out to the yard, and there'll be a deck out here. So this is the great room, living room, dining and kitchen, open kitchen, and then master bedroom here with bath and study, and a guest bedroom over here. So it's a smaller home, but it's how efficient can we be with the floor plan? There's a key to the home is a utility room here, and there's an attic above all of this. I don't know, can you see my cursor moving around? There's a vaulted ceiling here in the great room. and vaulted ceilings in these bedrooms right here. And then this attic is, with a drop down stair here, is mostly for storage, but we're putting some mechanical up into the attic as well. So there's an ERV in the home, which is bringing in, it's bringing in tempered fresh air and exhausting spent air that, and taking the heat or the cooling out of it, whatever you're putting into it for the season, and tempering the incoming air with that. And it's so the ERV will actually is going to go in the attic now. There's hydronic heating in the floor. So the hot water heater is a combination heat pump boiler for domestic hot water and boiler for the hydronic heating system. Clearly it doesn't mix the water, but the water is with a heat exchanger that efficiently heats the water for both purposes. Washer dryer here. It's got everything in the efficient plan. So let's see. Also the neighborhood, the house is not in the middle of nowhere. It's part of a neighborhood. It's very much a mostly post-World War II type 1950s mid-century homes type of neighborhood. And it's at the end of a street at a cul-de-sac, and is a very large wooded lot that the previous owner had already cleared for a home. Anyway, okay. From the outside, again, we're minimizing the amount of windows on the house, and PHIUS didn't acknowledge, we've got this barn door shading that the owner will operate manually. PHIUS didn't acknowledge that because it's manual and it's not automatic. But that's one of the things, like when the client goes away, they can close this and hook it from the inside. They can, when it's very hot or very cold, they can close these shutters and hook them from the inside, or just leave them open. So what makes this house green? We've already established it's a very simple house, but what makes the house green? And I hope this might be too small to see, but I'll show you. And this is part of, if you see, it's just a hand designed wall section, of which there were many during the design process, to ferret out what was going to be the most efficient way to build the house. And we tried looking at many different ways. We looked at double stud, where you have 2 rows of studs with all the insulation in between. And we looked at Larson trusses, where you've got this truss system on the outside that makes the wall thicker. And in the end, what it was the contractor's view that the most efficient way to build this was going to be 2x6 wall studs with 2.5 inches of EPS sheathing and insulation on the outside. And then there's a double rafter system. I thought there'd be big scissors trusses, but we fell in with a contractor who is considers himself a master framer and doesn't want to use scissors trusses. So he's going to have a lower rafter and an upper rafter. And the expanded polystyrene insulation is going to go around the outside. This ends up being the vapor barrier here at the inside of the EPS. And then the vapor barrier runs this red line, it goes under the slab and attaches to the vapor barrier under the slab. Remember, we've got the concrete slab here with the radiant tube heating in the slab here. We've got 6 inches of high density EPS below the slab. And then we've got an ICF, an insulated concrete form foundation wall. So we've got EPS insulation on the inside of that wall and EPS insulation on the outside of that wall. So it's a tight, buttoned up, simple wall. Another thing is creating details that are going to be simple to build and simple to execute. That's what we were striving for, because to make details that wouldn't be simple to build and simple to execute are just going to make things to be more expensive. And there's been things we've suggested to save money. I read an article recently about commercial roofers remove a lot of polyisocyanurate insulation off of commercial roofs, and there's now a secondary recycled market for people reusing that insulation, and you could buy it for pennies on the dollar because you're saving it from going to a landfill. The roofing contractor, the commercial roofing contractor, would have to pay to dispose of it. So now they're selling it. And we talked about it, and it was decided, no, this house is going to have brand new insulation. So there were many iterations of wall sections like this as we moved through and determined with the contractor what would be the most efficient way to go. I skipped over the part about choosing the contractor. If you follow this process, you're not getting to a point where you get 3 prices on one set of drawings. And what is that? You need a client with who's able to see the fallacies of that system, because the fallacies of that system are, you can have somebody give you a low bid that has a mistake in it and doesn't have the whole project in their low bid. And now you're beholden to somebody who you're trying to get them to give you a whole project when they miss something. The best way to do it, I believe, is to choose a contractor based on reputation, knowledge of the subject matter at hand, and references, and then negotiate with them, where if their first price is too high, that means you're asking for too much and you back down. And then as an architect, you can look at that and say, okay, is that reasonable? Or is the contractor, as an architect, if the contractor is being unreasonable about the pricing, and you think that he's or she is too high for where they are in the negotiation with the client. But finding, you never want to advocate a client entering into a contractor with a contractor who is not a person of integrity and person who knows what they're doing. So once you find the person of integrity who knows what they're doing, negotiating with them and arriving at a price together by adjusting scope and adjusting price would be the way to go. Let's see. I want a couple other things about green building. There's too many people these days who believe that green building is all about sprinkling solar panels and wind turbines around, and that is not what makes a building green. What makes a building green is, and that's what's so great about the passive house model, is that the sustainability of a house, its ability to function on low energy, is a function on how much insulation, how much attention to the vapor barrier, the air barrier, and the moisture intrusion, and right sizing the heating and air conditioning plant. And that's the benefit of working with the Passive House Institute model, because those criteria are double checked by that model. So I love PHIUS for that, the Passive House Institute of US. However, our client realized early on, and I must say, our client is the most knowledgeable layperson I've ever met about green building and certification systems. And she realized early on that it was going to be expensive to be certified as a passive house home. So while she wanted a home that was designed to the passive house energy model, she didn't necessarily want the home to be certified as passive house. And she wasn't sure she wanted the house to be certified. I was encouraging of the house to be certified because I'm a believer in, if you're not measuring something, are you really doing it? You know, how do you talk about the home afterwards if there's no, you know, because the insulation's closed up, everything's closed up other than producing your energy bills that are next to nothing. How do you talk about the home later when, if you wanted to go sell it or for some reason? Client considered that and looked into Department of Energy Net Zero Ready, which is a much less expensive rating system and certification process. And while we're just embarking on that process, we should be an easy shoe-in because it asks less than the PHIUS model. So we should be completely there. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the beauty of the PHIUS model is because it looks at the, you know, the real bones of your house, which is what kind of insulation are you using? Are you mitigating the moisture in your walls, and are you tying your vapor barriers together? And how are you achieving all this, and are you doing it in an efficient way? So again, be wary of people who just put solar panels on houses and don't care about the insulation value or the moisture management in the wall. This house will have solar panels on it someday, but the client and, you know, the couple that owns this house realize it may take them a few years where that becomes economically feasible for them to do it. In the meantime, they have a very low energy house. And the house we fully expect it to be net zero when they do get the solar panels. So I was creating other analogies too, where, you know, have you noticed in our world right now, there's a lot about consumerism where you've got, you know, if you want to be more relaxed, you know, there's a candle for that or a soap for that or something like that. And if, you know, there's a lot of people who think if you want to be green, we'll go get solar panels, and it's one doesn't necessarily beget the other. What makes the house green is the attention on insulation and being low energy. The solar panels are the icing on the cake once you've achieved the other things. And I feel very strongly about that. It's also the kind of thing where they're going to continue to come down in price as we go over time. They have already, and waiting is only a good thing. And like I just said, I also don't want to solve a problem with consumerism, which is a thin line as an architect, because if you think about it, that's what we do for a living, is we tell people what to buy. You know, so it's like am I a personal shopper, rampant consumer person for a living? No, we want to be smart about that. And we want to look and say, okay, what's appropriate here? What's the right thing to buy? What's not the right thing to buy? And another reason I adore our clients is they've purchased used kitchen cabinets. They found handmade used kitchen cabinets that somebody was pulling out of a house, and they have purchased them, and they're reusing those cabinets instead of going to Home Depot or whatever and ordering up new cabinets. You know, they're using cabinets that are already in the world. The floor will be the exposed concrete. There is a deliberateness to the finishes in this house to not be green for the sake of green. I knew somebody once who covered up a beautiful oak floor with bamboo because they thought it was greener. No, what's green is the floor that you already own, not covering up with something so that you look green. Anyway, be wary of rampant consumerism like that. I'm going through my notes here. I've long owned my responsibility as an architect to educate my clients on how to use less energy or to facilitate my clients using less energy. You know, you're specifying the insulation, you're specifying the furnace. This is in your hands to do the right thing. We are at the front line of this crisis. We owe it to the next generations to educate ourselves as architects and on how to reach net zero faster than anyone else is talking about, because every single timeline out there is too late. And I think the important takeaway there's a couple important takeaways from what I wanted to say today. Number one, this isn't a house of the future. This is a house of now. There's no radical technology that's delivering this house now. It's simple physics used in a very constructive, simple way, okay? BTUs in, BTUs out, just be smart about it. Another thing is that being smart and pragmatic with our resources includes how we spend the dollars allotted to a project. Backtracking to something that I wanted to talk about earlier that I missed was that, you know, we talked about this being a 1950s post-World War II neighborhood. They're not really large homes. This isn't, you know, you could walk to the lake from this home, but this home is not on the lake. It's not the multi-million-dollar homes that are on the lake. So therefore, not every home is going to appraise in this neighborhood. And if you haven't been through this process, the appraisal process is where the bank says, okay, for this neighborhood, your house shouldn't cost more than what the average homes cost. So if you look at what the average cost of a 1950s, you know, doesn't have a wow kitchen and doesn't have a wow master suite and stuff like that, you're comping with those homes. I thought it was very telling that after this home appraised, the mortgage broker told the client, oh, wow, I've never gotten a project in that neighborhood to appraise before, which we all agreed was good to know that it was good that we didn't know that going into it. But what's telling is that, you know, if our clients would have come to us and wanted a McMansion with a 3-car garage, no, that house would not have appraised in this neighborhood. You know, so being realistic with the resources at hand, what makes sense financially for your client and what makes sense financially for the neighborhood, all works together in this. It's again, it's part of the team, why nobody can race out ahead and go further and say, we're going to do it this way. It's a team effort that all has to work together. And quite frankly, I think as an architect leading the process, that's the way it should be. But that's the way it needs to work. So with that, I am going to, I think it's probably time to turn it over for questions, Megan.
Yeah, it's 6:38. So, and I can see a raised hand and a question here. If you're done, Pam, I can read it.
I can't see it, so
Yeah, I read it for you. So the question is, what's the name of the recycle proof insulation you can buy that you mentioned?
There's not a brand name, but if you Google recycled insulation, there's, you need to Google recycled insulation. I'll tell you what, maybe I could do it. Recycled commercial roofing insulation. And if you want, I can Google that after the presentation. It's not one brand that's doing it. There's one company that's trying to be a broker for this, but there's that company that now I'm I'll get some I could put some websites together and get it to you, Megan, and you could get it to everybody that was on.
Yeah, that's
right?
perfect. Yes.
Okay, let's do it that way. Anything else?
Yes. Oh, okay. So, yes, 3 more questions. So one question is, how did your clients decide the full cost of $300,000?
I don't know if she's on the call or not, but I'm going to guess that it had a lot to do with going to the bank and seeing, a combination of what they could afford and what they wanted to spend on their housing dollar. Because if you look at your situation right now, if you're part of a couple, there's what do you make and what does your husband make and how much do you want to spend on housing every month? And then you could back that out into what you want to spend on your mortgage and that translates into what you can spend on a house.
And does that include the cost of the land?
It did not include the
Did
cost.
not. Okay.
And I don't know what the land cost.
Right. Was that an existing house? I'm just curious, or just a lot available? So not an existing house.
It was an empty lot.
Empty lot. Okay. 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 Another question is, what are your thoughts on pushing a client who might be reluctant to commit to passive green building into seeing the value?
I'm sorry, what?
What are your thoughts on pushing a client who might be reluctant to commit to passive or green building into seeing the value of a passive or green building?
Well, you really have to know who you're talking to, because you don't want to completely alienate your client. And some clients would be completely alienated. There's a contractor that I do a lot of work with in the city of Chicago. I do a lot of high-end renovation projects with him. He's not so politically wired as I am. He is not wired politically the same way I am. He tends to be very right-wing in his thinking about the world. And he hates whenever I bring up insulation and talking about green with clients. And I've told them, it's like, you know what, this is my job to help people save money on energy costs. If you want to politicize that, that's your problem. I have a right to educate our clients on how they could save money on energy. And I have a right to give them good information that's going to make a difference over the, you know, you guys, we're talking about a cost when they build the house that has the ramification over the life of the house. Here's the other thing. You know, if you're not in a position to be seeing budgets for buildings, the insulation is one of the cheapest things on the whole budget. You guys, people are spending more money on backsplash tile than they are on their insulation. And it's your backsplash tile, you're going to get tired of it in 5 or 10 years and you're going to want a different color. Which, by the way, this client bought used like tile that somebody bought that they didn't put up, and they bought it cheap on eBay. You know, it's amazing the creativity that they're employing to stay in their budget. You know, but it's like, it's also amazing to me, the insulation is not the expensive part of your house. The structure and the concrete and the heating and air conditioning system and the electrical and the plumbing, that's the expensive part, you know. And then also what gets expensive is all your, you know, everything that you see on house, and it's like, oh my God, I have to have that, and I have to have that, and I have to have that. You know, it's like, set your priorities. What's important to you now? What's important to you down the road? You know, I had a client who paid money to put a snow melt system all the way around her house, which is basically hydronic heating in your sidewalks. Okay. And remember, I don't know if anybody else other than me had a dad who would say, close the door, you're heating the yard, you know, you're heating the outside. So I just mentioned, because I knew the client was very inclined toward wanting to save energy and be green about things. And I just mentioned her, I said, oh, you realize when you turn on your snow melt system, you're literally heating your yard. And she looked at me horrified and said, oh my God, I never thought about that before. And I said, well, use it wisely. You know, yeah, turn it on so grandma doesn't have to trudge through the ice on the way to your front door. But every time you turn it on, you're literally, you're just putting heat out there so that you don't have to shovel. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, to your point, I think besides clients' line of thought about the green issues and sustainability, it's also the market too. So, you know, a lot of clients might be willing to make that decision, but then they're always influenced. But then is the house, what's the resale value if they do this or don't do this, right? So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
I mean, yeah.
I know, okay, so I also have a nephew who just got engaged this week. Very excited about that. He's obviously just got engaged, not quite married, he did just buy a house though, but he says to me, he will build a house and it will be a net zero energy house. I know another young person who says when it's time for them to have a house, it will be a net zero energy house. I believe, and maybe there are many people on this call of a certain age where maybe you can't afford that house now, but you're telling yourself that when it's time for you to have a house, you're going to skip past these energy wasting behemoths that were built in the 90s, 80s, and prior, and that this is the kind of house you're going to have. I think what we're seeing is that this has to be the wave of the future if you care about the climate crisis. And I don't know the statistics on this, but I do believe maybe of people my age, which is, truth be told, you guys, I just turned 60 2 weeks ago. So I'm pretty, I'm really excited about that, actually. I'm really excited about that. I feel like I have power in the world, and I can, I'm someone now, but kidding. I'm kidding about that. But it's like, so people my age, they're looking at this really skeptically, but the further you get away from that number and you get younger people are like, no, this is what has to happen. And I've always believed this is what has to happen,
I think it's, yeah, you're right.
So I think, and that was another thing that I talked about with our clients, is that part of the Department of Energy rating system is you get that HERS rating, the HERS rating. And then I do believe, and I do sincerely hope and really want this to happen, that someday when you go to sell your house, you're going to have a HERS rating, a HERS rating attached to the house. That you're going to get assigned a number by your home inspector or whomever. If you didn't generate a good number, somebody's going to come and assign a very conservative number. And I think that your house should sell for what that number is, because it just amazes me. Now, granted, with a certain algorithm of location and what school district you're in and everything else that people care about, how close you are to the train station. But the idea that right now people aren't caring about how green their house is when they go to buy a house. And too many people aren't asking the right questions. People don't realize that code is such a low bar. The code is asking for hardly anything. The R value on this house is R36 in the walls and R78 in the ceiling.
Wow.
That is, code requires 21 in the wall,
yeah,
and 49 in the ceiling, right? That is nothing. That's not going to get us where we want to go. And I don't know if you're following, there's a big news story out there that is like being squashed. The National Association of Home Builders is a very big lobby in Washington, and they're really lobbying to keep energy codes where they are, and don't make the R values go up, and don't make the energy codes ask for more than they're currently asking for. Every movement in the energy code is met with great resistance from the National Association of Home Builders and other organizations, the National Roofers Association, many contracting organizations, which tend to not be more global warming thinking political allies. So the whole idea that the building codes are kept artificially low. There was the politics recently with the National Association of Home Builders and the ICC, the International Code Council that monitors all the codes. There was just a big fight about who could vote on the new codes, and they greatly diminished the number of people from municipalities that could vote on those codes, and increased the number of people from trade associations who could vote on those codes, because they wanted to increase the contractors voting on the codes and decrease the amount of people who worked for government from voting on the code, which further tamped down. So it's the same thing that's happening with voter voter rights in the states with the everyday citizens. It's happening with who gets to vote on the code as well. To with a concerted effort to get more climate deniers voting for building codes than people who believe that global warming is a thing. It's a very serious problem, very serious problem. I think more needs to be said in the news about that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I just, so Julia, she just pointed out something that I didn't know. There is something that's called energy efficient mortgages. So, and then I added a link to the chat box. I think it is helpful. I mean, if we can all look into it. I don't know if everybody can see it, but it's, I didn't know an energy efficient mortgage exists. So that's great. Thanks, Julia, for adding it to the note. So a couple more questions. Catherine is asking, what effect COVID has had on your practice this past year? And then also, are clients changing perception of the need for sustainable design?
The effect of COVID, I never would have guessed this. We are so busy. It's like, years ago, I did mostly commercial and industrial work, and I always wanted to do more houses. So I made a concerted effort over the years to take my knowledge of commercial and industrial work and translate that to the residential. And we've enjoyed many mostly high-end residential building projects. And so I've made that transition, but the commercial and industrial never went away. So now we've got commercial, industrial, and residential. And we've got a fair amount of very high-end residential. But I believe that green building needs to be for everybody and all people and all budgets, and we are glad to provide. But what happened during COVID is everybody went home and realized how much they didn't like their home, and we have so much work going on. We have many projects in the New Buffalo and Beverly Shores area where there's a new home we're building. We will be building in the Beverly Shores area. There's a boat garage with outdoor kitchen we're building in New Buffalo. There's a big heavy timber pavilion building with outdoor kitchen next to a swimming pool in New Buffalo. There's a pool cabana in Lake Forest. It's a lot of high-end outdoor structures so that people can really embrace their out of doors. Does that make sense? And then what was the second part of that question? We are very busy.
So I think we sort of touched on that. Also, your thoughts on clients changing perception of the need for sustainable design. So it's a combination of clients' thought and the market, right? And how they inform each other.
I think in general, the younger the client, the more inclination there is for acceptance of these ideas, and not just acceptance of the idea, but the realization that this has to be this way. But now, okay, one of my industrial clients is we're doing a very large recycling waste transfer station that's going to be built in the city. And that client being a business guy that didn't necessarily politically lean left, I would always bring up, hey, you could do lots of solar panels. There's things we could do here. Has always been a no to this. About a month ago, I was reading this article in the Wall Street Journal about how there's more money going to green infrastructure projects. And I sent him that link, and I guess he's finding out that's true. And now we're having a conversation about, you know, the office wing that's part of your recycling center could be net zero. Now, the building itself is low energy because it's over 100,000 square foot building that will not be heated or cooled and just has LED lights in it. So it already is a low energy building. But from the office side that still gets heated and air conditioned, I'm like, you've got more than enough room to put, you know, to super insulate this area of the building, and we put solar panels on top, and you could say your office is net zero. And he would have like just about hung up the phone on me a year ago or two, and now he's like, oh really, maybe we should do that. So I think it's growing in acceptance. Is it where it needs to be? Absolutely not. But I'm not going to be daunted for that. And I don't think anybody on this call should be daunted by that either. I think we need to keep the conversation going, because as I said before, we are on the front line of where this happens.
There's one more question. Thoughts on sustainability of a site for building in the first place? For example, building on a Florida coast has some serious implications for design.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've got friends who think that I should build a house in Phoenix by them. And I'm like, no way. I don't want to. No, you don't have enough water. No, don't go to Phoenix. There's not enough water there. What are you going to do? Right?
Right.
All this building on the coast. You know, even the coast of Lake Michigan with the you know, that boathouse we're doing, the client just dumped a couple $100,000 worth of rocks along the water to keep the beach, to keep the land from eroding under this new beach house. And it's like the lake's going to win. You know, I think we have to be very careful on where we build and pushing the envelope about how close to the water we get. And I really want to read that New York Times article that was just published. Was it last Sunday, about the Great Lakes? Did anybody read that? I haven't had a chance to read that yet. I've been traveling, but sustainability is okay. So we've been engaged in a conversation here tonight about the walls and the roof and how much energy you use to heat and cool your home. But the bigger picture is, where are we getting our water from? Where, you know, are we gonna fall into the sea because we're too close to it? You know, looking at Surfside and seeing, is it purely a maintenance problem, or is there something with subsidence there with the sand and being close to the beach? That is so sad, and I'm really very, very interested in that story and what happened down there. Because again, we're architects, and we're taking public safety in our hands with what we do for a living. And it's something that we, you know, we need to pay attention to. And you know, the sustainability, it's also the food, you know, the food deserts in some of the neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. What are we doing about that? You know, we could look at it on an urban planning scale. You know, we need to be thinking about all of it.
Exactly. Thank you. It's 7:02. I think we are past time, and thank you so much. I'm getting all these thank you notes for you. So thank you so much. I think it was a great presentation and great discussion. This is recorded and it will be posted on CWA website, so we can refer to it, re-listen it, learn from it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you guys, this was again, it was a great highlight. I was honored, Megan, that you asked me to speak, and
Sure.
I hope this was informative, and
Very good, yeah.
Thank
Very
you.
informative. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending.
thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.